The 2025 NFL Draft is over, and we have our on-paper draft grade. That's where we start on this episode of Locked On Patriots.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Patriots fans? I'm your host, Nick Cattles, born and raised in New England, your New England Patriots expert, host of the Everything Pats podcast, co-host of the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles, and also a sports talk show host veteran. On today's episode, some of the risks in this 2025 draft class, and the Patriots consistently focused on one characteristic that will change the look of this team over the weekend. But first, we start with our on-paper draft grade and how we got there. We appreciate you joining the show, making us your first listen, and for being an everydayer. The Locked On Patriots podcast is a proud partner of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada draft pick of the week later in the show. When we talk about grading an NFL draft right after said draft, we have to understand that it's the quote-unquote on-paper grade. What I mean by that is the draft class will not truly show itself for another couple of years. I don't pass judgment and close the book on anybody's career until they're at least 2 years in the league. I think it's somewhat silly and preposterous to say somebody is a bust after one NFL season. Now, that person might end up being a bust, but I'm not going to label them a bust after 1 year. I'm going to give them some time. So the true evaluation of the draft that just happened for the Patriots, the true evaluation will end up being in about 2 or 3 years. But when you look at a draft class on paper, and one of the biggest beefs that you could have with said draft class is the fact that the Patriots drafted a long snapper in the 7th round. If that's one of the biggest beefs that you have about a draft, I think you feel pretty good about that draft on paper. And that's why I'm giving this draft an A- for the Patriots. Now, extra weight has to be put on the picks rounds 1 through 4. You can't sit around and talk about a draft class and put a whole ton of weight on picks in the late 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds. Those picks are lottery tickets. So I look at rounds 1 through 4, and I say to myself, man, oh man, that was one heck of a weekend for that Pats front office and coaching staff. Why do I give it an A-? Number one, they filled needs without reaching. I talked about it leading into this draft. Don't feel desperate. Don't feel like you have to pick a certain position and reach to fill that void. And the Patriots were able to fill needs across the board without reaching. You look at the needs that they filled. Left tackle with Will Campbell. Now, whether or not he ends up being a full-time left tackle long-term, we'll get to that a little bit later in this episode. But left tackle, that's where Will Campbell's going to play in 2025. You filled that spot. Speed running back. Remember Robert Kraft at the owners' meetings talking about a speed running back, and Mike Vrabel said, we're going to draft a running back? You drafted your speed running back. How many times have we talked about needing an X receiver, somebody who can make plays downfield? You drafted that X receiver that can make plays downfield. Before this draft, we talked about the interior offensive line, left guard, also center, somebody young to back up Garrett Bradbury, maybe take Bradbury's roster spot as the starter on that offensive line. You did that. Defensive end, an edge, check. Nickel cornerback, some versatility in that secondary. You got that as well. Defensive tackle, yep, you did it. But you not only filled all of those needs, you did not reach to fill those needs. Phil Perry posted this during day 3 of the draft. This is the draft picks where they were picked versus the consensus big board where people thought they would be picked. And for this purpose, Phil Perry used the NFL mock draft database, which is the same website I used for my mock draft. And here's what we got. Will Campbell was selected 4th on the consensus big board. He was listed 4th. Greg Bedard recently in a podcast said that the Las Vegas Raiders were interested in Will Campbell. And of course, the Raiders drafted at 6. So you didn't reach. You picked Campbell at 4. The consensus big board had him going at 4. TreVeyon Henderson, you picked him at 38. The big board had him at 37, right on the dot. Burt Breer on NBC Sports Boston on Friday night said that Henderson could have gone to the Denver Broncos at 20. He could have gone to the Rams at 26. Both teams were seriously considering drafting Henderson. So getting him at 38 was not a reach. Kyle Williams, you picked him at 69. The consensus big board, 74, not a reach. Jared Wilson, you picked him at 95. The big board had him at 80, not a reach. Craig Woodson was your one reach. He was your one reach. Pick 106 in the 4th round. You picked him at 106. The consensus big board had him at 188. So a significant reach when you look at the consensus big board. But then you came back with Joshua Farmer and Braden Swinson. Farmer, you got him at 137. Big board consensus was 86. Braden Swinson, you got him at 146. The big board consensus was 71. Filling needs without reaching. Number 2 reason why I grade this draft as an A-, of course, on paper. Supporting the young quarterback. Supporting Drake May. Patriots went into this draft saying, we need to do more to help Drake May. And that's what they did. One of my bold predictions on a podcast last week was that not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. Yes, 4. 4 of the first 4 picks were going to be on offense. Right? Not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4. There it is. The first 4 picks would be on offense. And that's what you did. Campbell, Henderson, Williams, Wilson, offense, 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 offense. Helping May. You got the number 1 left tackle on the board. You got the number 1 center on many boards. Offensive line, trying to solidify it for the long term to help protect your young quarterback. You got your young quarterback, a running back, Binky and Henderson. You got your young quarterback, a toy, an explosive downfield receiver in Kyle Williams. Supporting Drake May. Got to give it an A-. And the final reason, the Patriots controlled the board. And what do I mean by that? Well, you look at the Farmer pick. Joshua Farmer was picked 137th, as I just mentioned a moment ago. The Patriots moved up to 137 to draft Farmer. Why did they move up to 137? Well, when you look at the picks, after 137 down to 143, and the Patriots originally had 144. So why did they move from 144 to 137? Because after drafting Farmer, the Panthers drafted a defensive tackle at 140. The Seahawks drafted a defensive tackle at 142. The Dolphins drafted a defensive tackle at 143. So 3 out of the next 6 picks were defensive tackles after you traded up to draft Farmer. That's understanding the board. That's understanding when runs are going to happen, getting ahead of those runs. And you could talk about Jared Wilson in the context around that Wilson pick. Andrew Callahan posted this. Excellent example of why you trade back. The Patriots added a 5th rounder and a 2026 4th round pick, and they still drafted Wilson at 95 when they might have taken him at 77 or 85. Mike Reese said, it wasn't might. Mike Reese in his Sunday column wrote, according to a team source, Wilson would have been a top consideration to pick at 77. So you were seriously considering drafting Wilson at 77. You dropped down 18 spots to 95. You picked up a 5th round pick and a 4th round pick in next year's draft, the 5th in this year's draft, and you still drafted the guy that you were seriously considering at 77. That is having a control of the board. That's having great intel. Somehow, some way, you had great intel. And it also speaks volumes for the grading system that the Patriots used in this year's draft, which goes back to the Packers system and Elliott Wolf bringing that in over the past year. You filled needs without reaching. You supported your young quarterback. And you controlled the board. A-. A- draft for the Pats. This draft Wasn't, however, without its risks. We'll take a look at some of those risks coming up next as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There is nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment, it just feels huge. It's the electric in the arena that you're feeling. With Game Time, you could be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high like it is with the Celtics at the Garden. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Oh, and the all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. That's Locked On NFL for the code. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. No draft, and I mean no draft, comes without inherent risk. Drafts are tough. They're very tough. It's not like it's like a science. Some people say, oh, it's a science. No. They're so tough to figure out from year to year. Every single draft is different. Some teams are much better at it than other teams. Baltimore is very good at it. Philadelphia is very good at it, right? Shout out to DeCosta and Howie Roseman. Those guys do a great job. But there's never a draft that you go through and you say to yourself, oh, there's going to be no risk taken here. It's just a risky business. There's no doubt about that, especially when you look at this specific draft. This specific draft, as we have talked about over the past couple of months, there were so many questions. There's always questions in a draft, just like there's always risk in a draft. Questions equals risk. But with this specific draft in 2025, we had so many questions, even about the top-tier talent in this year's draft. So many flaws that you could point to, so few clean prospects. So the Patriots took some risk. They took some risk in this draft going into it, and they took risks coming out of the draft. The top risk has to be Will Campbell. Now, I believe from what I've read and from what I've watched and from what I've heard, there's a good chance that Will Campbell can be your starting left tackle for the next 8, 9, 10 years. Good chance. I don't know if I'd say great chance. There are the questions, the legitimate questions that we talked about regarding his length. But the majority of experts and pundits and analysts say that he will be a left tackle. But there's still some risk. Because if Campbell is not a left tackle, if you've got to slide him inside, and if it's this year, especially if it's this year, if Campbell's a disaster in camp, and you say to yourself, there's no way that this guy's going to be a left tackle. First of all, the evaluation, woof. But secondly, what's your plan B? Your plan B right now is Vidarian Lowe. If Campbell can't make it work, you're going back to Vidarian Lowe. And we saw what happened with Lowe last year. Thanks, but no thanks. And it would not be ideal going into 2025 season without an upgrade at left tackle. So the first risk is with the first pick that you had at number 4. You got to hope that Will Campbell can play left tackle. He doesn't have to be great. Doesn't have to be unbelievable. But if he could hold that spot down, you feel good. You feel good about your future. The second risk that I want to talk about, the durability of TreVeyon Henderson. The durability and the workload. This last season at Ohio State, Henderson was terrific. And we could talk about what he does on the field. He's a terrific weapon. If he could turn that corner, get down the sideline, you almost have no chance of touching him. He's a true home run threat. He's dynamic. He's explosive. But he wasn't full-time last year at Ohio State. He was not a 3-down back playing 50 snaps. Now, he has the talent to be a 3-down back. He is one of the best blocking backs that we've seen in the past few years. I believe it was Daniel Jeremiah who said he might be the best blocking running back in like at least the last decade. He's that good. And he can run, he can catch. So he has the skill to be a 3-down back. But the reason why he was not the full-time 3-down back bell cow for Ohio State was because of his history. His history tells you that he's got some durability issues. He gets banged up. And he gets banged up to the point where you can't really trust him to be your full-time guy. You don't want TreVeyon Henderson in 2025 carrying the football 20 times in a game. That's not how you want to use him. Dane Brugler wrote about Henderson in his Beast at The Athletic. And when you look at Henderson's history, as a sophomore, Henderson missed 5 games and parts of several other games because of a broken bone in his left foot. Then, after that hampered him all season, he missed 3 games as a junior because of injury. So he missed 5 games as a sophomore and parts of several other games as a sophomore because of that left foot issue. Bothered him all year long. He had surgery in December of 2022. And then he came back in his junior year and he missed 3 games because of injury. And at that point, Ohio State, they went out after the 2023 season and they got Quinshon Judkins and brought him in as a transfer so they could balance it out a little bit. So drafting TreVeyon Henderson, he's explosive. He's a lot of fun to watch, and he's going to change this offense. And we're going to love watching him play when he's out there. But the running back position, as we know, is already about the wear and tear on that player. And you don't know how long you're going to have a running back for when you draft them because of the wear and tear, because of the shots that these guys take. And Henderson has multiple injuries in his past, and he was best at Ohio State when he was not used as the number one, you're on the field all the time type guy. So the Patriots are going to have to balance out his snaps. Now, obviously, it's easy to do when you have Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. But it's a question. When somebody has an injury history that has cost him several games in his college career to the point where the team said, we got to go out and get somebody else like Judkins to split it with you, then we have to keep that in mind. It's a risk. With that wear and tear and playing that position, even if he's not playing a ton of snaps every single week, it's still a risk. The third risk, and there were more risks taken in this draft for sure, but the third risk I want to talk about is Craig Woodson. If the Patriots swing and miss on Woodson, that's not great. Because when you look in the 4th round and you look at the other safeties that were taken in that round, Bowman was taken in that round. Ransom was taken in that round. Malachi Moore was taken in the 4th round. Those 3 safeties were taken after Woodson. So hopefully you were right. Because a lot of people, as I mentioned earlier, that consensus big board had Woodson at 188 and you took him at 106. So you have to make sure. You have to make sure that you hit on him to the level that goes above those other guys that were taken. And you got to hope that he's an impact player for you, because taking Woodson in the 4th round, and I don't have a problem with it. You love your guys. When you get to that point, day 3, and you love a guy, take a guy because you never know, right? But if you don't hit on him and those other safeties hit, then you look back at that pick and you're left scratching your head. And in the 4th round in this draft, when we talked about day 2 and day 3, those rounds 2 through 5, and really 2 through 4, I should say, bringing really impact players, guys that could start for your football team, to spend a 4th round pick in this specific draft on Woodson, you got to hit. Because if he's a swing and a miss, you look back and you go, man, a lot of people thought he was a 5th round, 6th round guy. We went out on the ledge for him. We fell in love with him, and we got him in the 4th round, early in the 4th round at 106. And we had all night to think about it. We had all morning to think about it, and we still went with him at 106. Hopefully, Woodson is a hit. He doesn't have to be a home run, but hopefully he's a player that contributes for you and outplays those other safeties taken in the same round but below him. All right, the Patriots put heavy emphasis on one specific trait during this draft. That's coming up next as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Armada pick of the week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. This week, we're highlighting the top pick from the Patriots draft, the one selection that truly stood out, the guy who showcased the strength and power to push the Pats forward as we look ahead to next season. This week's Armada and clear-cut top pick of the draft, of course, is Will Campbell. The Pats are depending on Campbell to be a heavy-duty and rugged left tackle during the 2025 season. Campbell is the most important pick of this draft, not only because he's the fourth pick overall, and he was your first one, but also because he will have to show capability and confidence like the Armada does on the road while he protects Drake May's blind side. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what I think Will Campbell can do here in New England. It's clear that our top pick of the draft is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada Rogue or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. One of the clear primary focuses of the draft for the Patriots was to upgrade this team's athleticism. And we have seen it, right? When you watch this team over the past couple of years, athleticism was lacking. Athleticism was a problem. You couldn't really check that box for everybody on the field with the Patriots. And this began in the Belichick years, and it carried over to last year's team with Mayo. And it's clear that the Patriots went into this draft saying to themselves, we have to get more athletic. There have been plenty of complaints, especially from this guy, about the lack of a sideline-to-sideline linebacker. Now, they didn't draft that guy, but Robert Spillane is that guy. And you hope that Woodson can get a little sideline-to-sideline on the second and third level. And drafting Woodson might open up Peppers and Duggar to get sideline to sideline in that role. And I've been complaining about it. Where's the speed on the second level? In some cases, where's the speed on the third level of this defense? Where is it? Then you look on offense. My goodness. You know, when we talk about the overall speed of this team, it's not just the second, third levels of the defense. It's first in the mind of the offense. Where's that explosive wide receiver that can get downfield? Where's the explosive running back? You know, Ramondre Stevenson is a good back, but I wouldn't call him explosive. He's a powerful downhill type runner. Antonio Gibson, he's more, jittery. I don't know if I'd call him explosive. TreVeyon Henderson is explosive. Kyle Williams is explosive. A different dynamic both of them will bring to this offense, and they will help the overall speed and attack of this team in 2025. And the Patriots, they aggressively took those explosive playmakers. And we got some numbers for you. So the 33rd team, that website, they posted about Henderson's max speed. Henderson's max speed on the field was 22 miles per hour. Now, let me put that into some context, thanks to the 33rd team post. According to the post, only 3 ball carriers in the NFL reached 22 plus miles per hour last season, and that's from Next Gen Stats. We're talking about Turpin, we're talking about Thomas Jr., BTJ, and we're talking about Gibbs in Detroit. Only 3 ball carriers in the NFL last season reached 22 plus miles per hour. Henderson, max speed, 22 miles per hour. Phil Perry, he posted this. Kyle Williams, by the way, was clocked as the fastest wide receiver at the Senior Bowl. Williams was clocked at 21.36 miles per hour. So you've got Henderson, who gets up to 22. You've got Williams, who's at 21.36. Speed. on-field speed. We're not just talking about, shorts and T-shirt speed. We're not just talking about combine speed. We're talking about legitimate on-the-field football speed. Both Henderson and Williams have that. But it didn't even stop at the skill positions. And this is why I say the Patriots were clearly focused on athleticism in this draft, because it wasn't just Henderson and Williams, the guys that you can watch on Saturday and say, oh, they run fast. it was at the other positions as well. Evan Lazar posted this about Jared Wilson, interior offensive lineman, center from Georgia. You got him at 95. We talked about him earlier. Wilson posted, and I've talked about the relative athletic score a lot as we got ready for the draft. Wilson's RAS was 9.84 at the combine. He ran a 4.84 40-yard dash. Athlete. Kent Lee Platt, who came up with the relative athletic score. Craig Woodson, your fourth-round pick that we just discussed. His RAS was 8.76. 8.76. That ranked 151st. Now, you might say, that ranked 151st? Zippity-doo-dah. No. Yeah, it ranked 151 out of over 1,200 free safeties. His 8.76 RAS was 151st out of 1,209 free safeties, going back from 1987. So from 87 to 2025, Craig Woodson was just outside the top 150 at his position. Even the long snapper. Brett Coleman posted this. Can we talk about the Patriots' new long snapper having a better 10-yard split than Rome Odunze? Athleticism. And not only did they draft athletes, because you could draft athletes. You could draft the guys that you watch at the combine and go, oh my God, that guy ran like a 4.3 40. Yeah, what was his broad jump? What was his vert? That's all great. But as we know, there have been plenty of athletes in the NFL that don't end up being good football players at that level. But here's the difference, hopefully, with what the Patriots did in this draft. They not only went after those athletes, but they also went after guys who have high character and high football IQ. Will Campbell is a tremendous athlete. Will Campbell is one of the best athletes that we've seen at his position with his size. And that's a fact. If you look at relative athletic score, Will Campbell off the charts with that RAS. But he's also crazy intelligent on the football field. Coaches say when you talk to him, it's like talking to another coach. So when you marry the athleticism with the high football IQ and hopefully that football character and work ethic, that's the magic sauce. That's the magic recipe that Mike Vrabel and company are looking for. Because not only are you a tremendous athlete, but you have tremendous acumen. And you're going to take your job seriously. And you're going to work at your job. It doesn't mean that all of these guys are going to be hits. They're not all going to be hits. They're not all going to be home runs or even triples. But you have a much higher likelihood of hitting on your picks if you're not only checking the athleticism box, but you're also looking at the character and the high football IQ, the work ethic, because those things to go along with your natural athleticism, your gifted athleticism, is what's going to make you different. And the Patriots are just catching up to the evolution of the game. They've been behind in this. When you have less athleticism, you have a lot less margin for error. And a lot of those Belichick football teams, they won because of their smarts, and you can do that. But man, your margin for error, especially in 2025 football, when you've got a bunch of athletes and you're scoring the points in the quarterback position with the offenses being, so deep now and the schemes are being so intricately woven in. If you're not athletic, you better be a freaking Mensa across the board. There's just less margin for error if you don't have that natural athleticism. So the Patriots, I think, did a fantastic job addressing that in this draft. A draft that was an A- for me. All right, that wraps up this edition of Locked On Patriots. On tomorrow's show, we'll continue to discuss the fallout from the draft. But let me know your thoughts on today's topics. Reach out to me on Twitter at NickCRadio. And don't forget to throw a comment in on the YouTube channel. Thank you for making Locked On Patriots your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. The NFL Draft, it's over, but the roster moves and news never stops. Hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.